In any case, what unifies this panel is, apart from that, you're all powerful women, is the theme of trauma and its impacts, and authenticity and free expression. How you've all worked so hard to be the people that you are and to express who you are. And I'll begin with the statement that Jamie gave me when we talked last time, and you talked about the stunning hammer blows of conditioning. Yeah. But also about how the most important thing is the importance of freedom of the mind. So I'm just going to ask you, each of you, to tell me what freedom actually means to you, because I think you've all been both experienced the lack of it and worked very hard to achieve it in your own life. So just talk about freedom to me, each in your own words. Alyssa, why don't we start with you? Thank you. Ashley, how about yourself?
Thank you so much. It's really great to be here, and I'm very honored to be with these fellow powerful women. I respect all of you so much. You know, one of the great questions I continually ask myself in my recovery is, how free do I want to be? You know, how free do I want to be? And the instant refrain that came to mind when you asked the question is, you know, freedom from patriarchal domination, and freedom from patriarchal norms, and freedom from the fear of sexual coercion and sexual insult. Of course, I talk about it so openly. I was molested for the first time that I remember when I was 7 years old. And part of my freedom around that was I went immediately to adults and told them, you know, but they said, oh, he's a nice old man. That's not what he meant. And so freedom is being believed, and the end of impunity. You know, freedom is the end of impunity. And then we have the freedom from this toxic masculinity, and turn all of this up or on its head and just like stop. So there's a lot in there, but I know we've got a wonderful hour to spend with each other.
Thank you so much. Jamie, freedom of the mind. What does that mean for you?
Well, I'm going to actually read you the quote, and it says, at such a time, it seems natural and good for me to ask myself these questions. What do I believe in? What must I fight for, and what must I fight against? Our species is the only creative species, and it has only one creative instrument, the individual and mind and spirit of a man. Nothing was ever created by two men. There are no good collaborations, whether in music, art, poetry, and mathematics, philosophy. Once the miracle of creation has taken place, the group can build and extend it, but the group never invents anything. The preciousness lies in the lonely mind of man. And now the forces marshaled around the concept of the group have declared a war of extermination on the preciousness, the mind of man. And this I believe, that the free exploring mind of the individual human is the most valuable thing in the world. And this I would fight for, the freedom of the mind to take any direction it wishes undirected. And this I must fight against, any idea, religion, or government which limits or destroys the individual. This is what I am and what I'm about. I can understand why a system built on a pattern must try to destroy the free mind, for that is the one thing that can, by inspection, destroy such a system. That's what I'm about. That is my rallying cry, the freedom of the mind to do it, as Ashley just said, freedom without these oppressed subjugation by others. The freedom to have my own mind is all I ever wanted. It's all I will ever fight for. And it is something worth fighting for. And so that is as important a writing as I've ever read in my life or ever will. And it literally is my guiding principle for the rest of my life.
Thank you. Well, Mona, that takes me very directly to you because for two reasons. One is that when you first broke out, I believe it was because you very much stood up against the suppression within your own culture and of women particularly. But also, as a Muslim woman in a Western society, and you very proudly and even militantly wear your hijab, which is seen as a symptom of oppression. So on the one hand, you stood up for freedom within your own culture at some cost to yourself, I think. And at the same time, you're manifesting a lot of freedom by daring to wear something that to a lot of people seems, speak to me about freedom from your perspective.
Yeah, actually, when you first asked the question, it brought me to mind of something you said in the film. And you said that maybe there's something about being a minority in this particular culture that is so highly stressful that it deranges the immune system. And I'm someone who struggles with an autoimmune condition. And when you said that, it impacted me so deeply. I actually started to tear up. And as the tears fell, it reminded me that this is a symbol to so many people. You know, the way that I dress is a symbol of so much to so many people, when in reality, it is simply a choice of attire that for me is the same way someone would adorn themselves with the practice of meditation. I adorn myself in this practice, where every day I reconnect and reorient my life that my relationship to my own heart is the most central relationship. And for me, freedom is, I feel deeply that freedom is the cultivation and refinement of the heart, and the freedom to sit in silence and to do that deep work without disruption from patriarchy, without disruption from empire or racism or white supremacy. Whatever the ism is that wants to come into my life and tell me that I'm not entitled to refine this heart and to do that deep soul work that connects me to the deepest parts of myself. Because I feel that empire, consumerism, capitalism is getting in the way of that. It tells me that I need stuff, when in reality, all I need is this deep connection. And so for me, that's ultimate freedom, is to break away from all of that and to say that I have what I need here.
Now, I have to say that in my own life, I mean, I endorse, appreciate, and inspired by everything you all said. I ask all of you to comment on, I'm not going to ask you what happened to you. I mean, you can say as much or as little about that. Ashley has already talked something about it in her life about that. But I'm more asking about how trauma manifested in your life and what work you've done to free yourself from the internal impact. So how has trauma showed up in your life, and what work have you done to liberate yourself from it? And Jamie, if I can begin with you this time.
I think trauma creates silence. It made me very quiet. You all don't know me very well. I wish I knew all of you better. I admire you all very much. It made me compliant. And the freedom from that silence has been for me through both my recovery from opiate addiction and alcoholism, through a recovery program and the community of that program, which has given me a safe circle to express myself honestly, but also through psychotherapy. The safety that I have felt with the very person that I almost outed her. Whoops, Gabor. I know. No, I know, but I almost just outed her. That would be bad. But that you just mentioned, that gave me freedom to actually bring out the things that have caused me such pain my whole life. By the way, every human being has trauma. Every human being has pain. That is the nature of being human. We are human. We are contradictory. We are flawed, and we are hurt. And that is just the nature of being human. So that has worked for me, that the exploration of that in a safe space, both in a therapeutic environment as well as in a recovery environment, has made me feel safe, because in recovery, as many people here know, and certainly many people in the world know, there's a phrase, you're only as sick as your secrets. And trauma is a secret. And trauma creates silence. And I am silent no fucking longer. And that has been a liberation for me.
And maybe this is where you see yourself, not in loud pain, but in silence, in overthinking, in people-pleasing, in holding everything in, because it never felt safe to express it. Trauma doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers, stay quiet, or you'll lose love.
All here together to be exploring how can we live our best life? What does this mean for us as individuals, as a society? So I am so pleased to have this discussion, not just about core root causes of our suffering, but also the tremendous hope of living in this moment, of being a human who has such insight and knowledge, and our actions matter so much for our future generations. So let me introduce my two colleagues here, Dan Siegel, who's the executive director of the Mindsight Institute. He's a household name in many countries. Dan is going to help us understand how we can wake up from this lie of the separate self. And Gabor Maté, physician, best-selling author. He has brought us so much insight over decades on understanding addiction, trauma, child development. So I'd like to start by welcoming both of you. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having us. You know, one way to begin this discussion, I think, is to say that when we feel overwhelmed, when something meaningful is at stake and we feel hopeless for what the future holds or helpless to do something about it, it can make that understandable stress of a meaningful thing happening to turn into distress. And in some ways, the related topic for today is about trauma, when events that are happening can overwhelm our ability to cope and lead to lasting negative impacts that both you, Alyssa, and Gabor, you have beautifully written about. And so what I'd like to just present is the view that one of the messages that modern culture has been giving that is very different from what indigenous wisdom has taught us from thousands of years of various traditions from around the world, and also paralleled by contemplative wisdom practices from thousands of years also from around the world, is the view that modern culture says the self is the same as the individual, that who we are is just this person in a singular body or bodies like ours. If we call that the solo self, this isolated, separated view of what the self is, we go against what indigenous teachings have taught. We go against what contemplative teachings have taught. And yet we embed this in the way we parent our children, the way we school them in educational programs, the way culture at large is telling us that we're separate. What I want to suggest to you is that that mechanism of the solo self seeps into our core, into our soul, into our minds, and has us feel without even our awareness that there's something not quite right. And so it leads to social injustice and racism, saying us versus them, and we are better than those people over there. It leads to misinformation and polarization. It leads even to the climate crisis, where we separate as humans from nature as if we could possibly be not a part of all living beings. So this solo self may be a lethal lie, lethal in the sense that racism and genocide and what we're seeing now, even with this day of hate, are driven by this in-group, out-group history we've inherited. But yet we can rise above that if we realize that we can transcend this view of the separate self with awe, with gratitude, with compassion, which are usually called self-transcendent, but rather see them as self-expanding. So we're not just a me, but we're also a we, this notion of a we, and the idea that we are intra-connected within the wholeness of things. So I think the pathway forward, which we can talk about collectively, is a pathway to identify the problem, like a splinter in your foot, remove the splinter. So the limping that humanity is doing and is about to destroy the earth with, the living systems on earth, we can actually identify it, remove it, and do something about it. The solo self is that splinter that we can actually heal in a very practical way and realize the me and the we that is our true intra-connected identity.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Dan. We'll want the technology for removing the splinter soon. So Gabor, in thinking about this mental health epidemic, particularly of our youth, and how people are interpreting the world, I would love to hear how you think of trauma, the role trauma plays in our mental health crisis.
Thank you, Alyssa. I'll address that in a moment. Let me just first register my pleasure in being on line with the two of you. Let me address one more issue here. This just happened today. Pope Francis, 3 days ago, I should say 2 weeks ago, put out a tweet. And he said, social justice demands that we fight against the causes of poverty, inequality, and the lack of labor, land, and lodging, against those who deny social and labor rights, and against a culture that leads to taking away the dignity of others. This is Pope Francis, a very famous Canadian psychologist who I'll not dignify by mentioning by name here, but you would know of him, many of you. He tweeted back, "There's nothing Christian about social justice. Redemptive salvation is a matter of the individual soul." Wow. Now here's a psychologist who understands nothing about human beings whatsoever. Because to answer your question, Alyssa, about the mental health epidemic that is striking the Western world, the New York Times 2 days ago had an article about the rise in childhood and youth depression and anxiety. There have been articles in the New Yorker, the New York Times in the last 6 months, hand-wringing over what's driving the epidemic of childhood suicides. The number of children being diagnosed and treated medicated for X number of so-called mental health disorders is burgeoning. There was an article in the New York Times on the front page only 3 or 4 months ago that talked about the same issue, and they featured a teenager, 17-year-old, I think, who's on 8 different psychiatric medications. 8 psychiatric medications. So there's something going on that the culture both causes on the one hand and doesn't want to recognize on the other, which is that individual mental health, and this is very much along the lines of what Dan was speaking about. Individual mental health is not separable from the environment. It's not separable from the relationships or the lack of relationships that people experience in their lives. So that because our neurobiology is communal and interpersonal, it also means that even if you point to some biological process in a human's brain that you think is causing the mental health condition, what you're missing is that biology itself reflects that person's relationship with the world and with the culture. And driving the mental health epidemic amongst youth in our society today is precisely the nature of connections, which are very often stressed, troubled, and trauma inflicted, and which are also very often isolating and isolated. So that whatever happens to an individual reflects what's happening to their whole environment and to their culture. And the New York Times and its writers and anybody else will never discover the source of the mental health crisis that many people are facing, particularly young people are facing, without looking at the larger questions.
And this is where most people misunderstand their pain, because we've been taught to look at mental health as something personal, something wrong inside us. But what Dr. Gabor Maté is pointing to is something deeper. Your pain didn't come from nowhere. It came from disconnection, from environments that couldn't hold you, from relationships that didn't feel safe. And when that happens, the child doesn't say, something is wrong with them. The child says, something is wrong with me.
What is it about a culture that stresses parents so much that they can't be available for the children the way they would want to be? What is it that dictates that so many people should carry trauma without even knowing it because their healthcare givers learn nothing about trauma during their training? What is it that isolates people so much? How come in the face of the social media, what we actually have is not a social media. It doesn't make us more social. It makes us more isolated and alone. And it's been shown that the more people spend time on social media, the less healthy their mental status happens to be. In this culture of competition and isolation and individualism, which is not the same, by the way, as individuality,